Deep within the rugged folds of southeastern Oklahoma lies Latimer County, a place where the densely wooded Sans Bois Mountains cast long, heavy shadows over isolated dirt roads. In the autumn of 2009, this unforgiving wilderness, known to locals as a sanctuary for those wishing to remain unseen, became the stage for a profound anomaly. The quiet towns bordering these hills rely on a fragile, unspoken understanding that the woods keep their own secrets. Yet the tranquility of this rural landscape was permanently shattered when a solitary, locked vehicle was found sitting idle on a remote, muddy logging trail. It was a silent monument to a sudden, inexplicable void. The white pickup truck belonged to the Jamison family, who had vanished without a trace into the dense timber. When hunters first stumbled upon the abandoned vehicle days after it was last seen, the scene presented an immediate, chilling paradox. The truck was securely locked, parked at an odd angle as if hastily left behind, yet the surrounding mud showed no clear footprints leading away into the brush. Inside the cab, a small, emaciated dog named Maisie was found barely clinging to life, having survived for over a week without food or water. The windows were rolled up, trapping the desperate animal inside while her owners were nowhere to be found. Law enforcement officers arriving at the scene were immediately confronted by a baffling array of evidence that defied conventional logic. Scattered cash, totaling a staggering $32,000, lay across the floorboards and tucked beneath the seats, entirely untouched by whoever had occupied the vehicle last. Alongside the money sat the family's wallets, identification cards, cell phones, and a GPS device detailing their erratic journey up the mountain. In a standard robbery or carjacking, these items are the first to disappear. Their presence suggested that whatever lured or forced the family out of their truck was not motivated by financial gain. Bobby Jamison, his wife Sherilynn, and their 6-year-old daughter Madyson had traveled to this desolate ridge, supposedly searching for a 40-acre plot of land to purchase. Friends and relatives back in their hometown of Eufaula described the trio as a deeply loving unit, yet one increasingly plagued by a profound, suffocating paranoia in the months preceding their disappearance. They had begun to isolate themselves from their community, retreating behind a fortress of newly installed security cameras and locked doors. The narrative of a simple family outing seeking a fresh start violently clashed with the bizarre artifacts left behind in the dirt. The shadows gathering around the family's final weeks were thick with whispered anxieties and strange, disturbing claims. Bobby and Sherilynn had confided in their local pastor that their home was infested with hostile, unseen forces, engaging in what they described as spiritual warfare against entities they believed lived in their roof. Sherilynn, known to possess a fiery, protective spirit, had recently purchased a .22 caliber pistol, telling neighbors she needed it to defend her family from an encroaching, unnamed threat. This escalating dread transformed their rural home from a sanctuary into a psychological prison, pushing them toward the isolation of the mountains. Security footage recovered from their Eufaula property on the day they departed offered a haunting glimpse into their final known hours. The silent, grainy video showed Bobby and Sherilynn moving in a trance-like state, mechanically loading belongings into their truck while completely ignoring one another. They paced back and forth between the house and the vehicle in a bizarre, synchronized stupor, stopping occasionally to stare blankly into the distance. Investigators noted the sheer unnaturalness of their movements, a chilling pantomime that suggested severe psychological distress, the influence of unknown substances, or a paralyzing fear of something lurking just outside the camera's frame. As the search intensified, the rugged Oklahoma wilderness proved to be an unforgiving adversary for the desperate rescue teams. Over 400 volunteers, Tracking dogs and helicopters scoured the treacherous ravines and dense underbrush of the Sans Bois Mountains, fighting through heavy rains and plummeting temperatures. Despite this massive mobilization, the landscape yielded nothing but dead ends and frustration. The dogs lost the scent mere yards from the abandoned truck, circling in confusion as if the family had simply evaporated into the cold autumn air. The vast, indifferent woods swallowed their tracks entirely. In the absence of physical evidence, the vacuum of information was quickly filled by swirling, dark theories regarding the family's potential involvement in the region's shadowy underbelly. Latimer County had a known history of illicit methamphetamine production, with hidden labs tucked deep within the hills where the truck was found. Whispers circulated through local diners and hardware stores that Bobby and Sherilynn had inadvertently stumbled upon a cartel operation, or perhaps had gone to the mountain for a clandestine drug deal that ended in tragedy. The $32,000 in cash became the central anchor for these theories, a dangerous amount of money for a supposedly destitute family to carry. The lingering uncertainty cast a heavy, suffocating pall over Eufaula and the surrounding rural communities. Neighbors who had once shared quiet evenings on porches now looked at the surrounding tree lines with renewed suspicion, locking their doors tighter as the nights drew in. The disappearance of a child, especially young Madyson, struck a deeply resonant chord of terror, shattering the illusion of safety that small-town America so fiercely protects. The unsolved mystery morphed into a modern folk tale, a grim reminder of how quickly the familiar can dissolve into the terrifying unknown. Months bled into years, and the intense scrutiny of the initial investigation gradually cooled into the stagnant silence of a cold case. The incident command center was dismantled, the yellow police tape weathered and snapped, and the mountains reclaimed the muddy clearing where the truck had sat. For the surviving relatives, time became a cruel, suspended state of agonizing limbo, devoid of the closure that a grave or a trial might provide. The Jamisons became phantoms in the local consciousness, their faces fading on rain-streaked missing persons posters plastered across county bulletin boards. The fragile peace of the forgotten case was violently ruptured in the late autumn of 2013, 4 long years after the family drove up the mountain. A small group of hunters pushing through a remote, densely overgrown ravine nearly 3 miles from the site of the abandoned truck stumbled upon a grisly tableau. Partially buried beneath years of fallen leaves and forest detritus lay the skeletal remains of 2 adults and 1 child. The sheer distance from the vehicle immediately complicated the narrative, raising agonizing questions about how and why the family traversed such harsh terrain. Forensic anthropologists and agents from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation descended upon the remote site, meticulously sifting through the damp earth. The recovery process was agonizingly slow, yielding fragmented bones, tattered remnants of clothing, and Sherilynn's distinctive boots. Dental records and DNA testing eventually confirmed the tragic, inevitable truth. Bobby, Sherilynn, and Madyson had been found. Yet the discovery offered no solace, only a deeper, more profound sense of dread, as the earth had held its secrets too long for easy answers to emerge from the decay. The subsequent autopsy reports, eagerly anticipated by desperate investigators, ultimately provided a frustratingly opaque picture of the family's final moments. Due to the extensive passage of time and the harsh environmental exposure, the medical examiner was forced to list the cause and manner of death for all 3 victims as officially undetermined. However, a singular terrifying detail emerged from the forensic analysis. Bobby's skull exhibited a small, distinct hole that some experts suggested could be consistent with a bullet wound. Because the bone was highly degraded, definitive proof remained agonizingly out of reach, leaving the specter of murder hovering over the findings. This forensic ambiguity breathed terrifying new life into the theories of foul play that had long circulated in the valley. If they were murdered, the logistics of the crime presented a staggering puzzle for law enforcement to assemble. A killer would have had to intercept the family, force them 3 miles through dense, unforgiving brush, execute them, and then return to the truck without taking the massive sum of cash or the easily pawned electronics. Alternatively, the family might have been fleeing from a perceived unseen threat, driven by the very paranoia that had consumed their final days, only to succumb to the elements. Investigators revisited every shred of evidence, pulling old files and re-interviewing witnesses, hoping the discovery of the bodies would unlock a forgotten clue. They scrutinized the GPS coordinates found in the truck, which pointed to an isolated patch of woods far from any main road, a location seemingly chosen with deliberate, baffling intent. Despite the renewed vigor, the physical evidence at the recovery site was entirely compromised by animal scavenging and weather, offering no foreign DNA, no weapon, and no distinct trail connecting the victims to a perpetrator. The forest had effectively sterilized the crime scene. Perhaps the most haunting artifact recovered during the entire investigation was a single photograph discovered on a cell phone left behind in the truck. The image showed young Madyson standing alone against the desolate backdrop of the Sans Bois Mountains, her arms crossed, her expression deeply distressed and fearful. Investigators could not determine who took the photo, or whether it was captured in the moments just before the family vanished into the timber. That frozen image of a frightened child became the emotional epicenter of the tragedy, a silent plea echoing from the past that no one could answer. As official avenues of inquiry stalled once again, the narrative of the Jamison family began to intertwine with the deep-rooted folklore of the region. The Sans Bois Mountains have long been the subject of local legends, tales of hidden caves, outlaw ghosts, and unexplained phenomena that predate the modern era. For some residents, the bizarre nature of the vanishing, combined with the family's prior claims of spiritual warfare, suggested something beyond human malice. While investigators firmly grounded their work in physical reality, the cultural memory of the event took on a darker, almost mythical resonance. The most glaring contradictions of the case continue to defy any single unifying theory of what transpired on that autumn day. If the family was fleeing a drug cartel hit, why was the dog spared and the money left behind? If they succumbed to a shared paranoid delusion resulting in a tragic murder-suicide or death by exposure, how did they navigate 3 miles of treacherous terrain without leaving a clear trail? The abandoned cache, the locked doors, and the untouched belongings form a perimeter of impossible facts that guard the core of the mystery. Today, the story of the Jamisons serves as a grim cautionary tale, whispered among those who live on the edges of the vast American wilderness. The case profoundly altered the psychological landscape of Latimer County, leaving behind a legacy of unresolved grief and enduring suspicion. The realization that an entire family could be erased, their final moments playing out in terrifying isolation just miles from civilization, fundamentally shook the foundational security of the surrounding towns. The woods are no longer just a place of quiet retreat. They are a sprawling, silent graveyard of unanswered questions. The mountain itself remains utterly indifferent to the human tragedy it conceals, its dense canopy of oaks and pines swaying in the same winds that swept away the family's final traces. The dirt logging roads still wind through the deep ravines, occasionally traversed by hunters and hikers who pass by the fateful clearing without ever knowing the horrors it witnessed. Nature's relentless cycle of growth and decay has smoothed over the scars of the search efforts, burying the physical memory of the event beneath layers of fresh soil and falling leaves. The unsettling disappearance of the Jamison family in 2009 stands as one of the most profoundly disturbing unsolved mysteries in modern history. It is a chilling testament to the fragility of human existence and the dark, impenetrable secrets that the wilderness can keep. As long as the exact sequence of events remains hidden in the shadows of the Sambois Mountains, the ghosts of Bobby, Sherilynn, and Madyson will continue to wander through the archives of forgotten history. Their story is a haunting reminder that sometimes the most terrifying truth is the one that simply vanishes into the dark.